There's a plethora of medical dramas on TV right now. My guest could provide a couple of really good scripts. How about this one? 2 weeks after his wedding, December 4th, 2009, Wendell Betts feels his chest getting tighter and tighter. His wife Sharon calls 911. Wendell is unable to breathe when they intersect with the EMTs, stop on the road halfway to the hospital in Fredericton, New Brunswick, to work for 20 minutes on him just to stabilize him. This is the man known as the COPD warrior. Welcome, Wendell Betts from Fredericton.
Thank you.
Oh, I wish this was the only story, but you have so many crises with this disease that some of us have only heard about in recent years. Chronic Obstructive Pulmonary Disease. You've explained to me that it's been a catch-all for other diseases we have heard of.
It's several diseases under the umbrella of COPD, like emphysema, pulmonary fibrosis, asthma, severe asthma, bronchial asthma.
And 85 to 88% of people who suffer with COPD are long-term smokers. That's not your story.
It's not my story. I wasn't a smoker. I was born with asthma.
Now, your dear wife, your newlywed, your bride, has this traumatic experience. She thought she was going to be a widow that night.
Yes, I was unaware at the time, but she was calling her mother on the phone while we were on the side of the road and just crying out to her mother, "Please, please, please pray." Wendell can't breathe.
So frightening. You were diagnosed in 2001 at the age of 47 with severe COPD. Doctors had suggested that you go to the U.S. So for years you lived between Florida and Arizona. The U.S. government deemed you permanently disabled. You were able to work with your favorite toy for a while.
My motorcycle?
Motorcycles?
Absolutely.
Selling them?
Selling them. I fought to stay unsupported by the government, but there came a point when I had to surrender. But yeah, it's a crazy story that God created from birth.
6 hospital stays in 2 months. June 2011, things were getting worse. You were diagnosed with very severe COPD. You illustrate just what that experience was like for you.
I do, and it was February 26th of 2012 that...
Okay, everybody has seen these stir sticks.
In convenience stores, coffee shops. You put that in your mouth and plug your nose and try to breathe.
Seriously?
That's what.
Every breath was that labored?
That difficult.
And there's not enough air.
There's no air.
That's not enough oxygen for your brain to work.
That's why you have to go on the oxygen.
Oh my, that is scary.
That is.
I don't know how you wouldn't be having a constant panic.
You have to learn how to be calm, because when you become nervous or anxious, it becomes worse.
Obviously. Oh boy. Well, this just escalated. You had dramatic changes in your health, in your home. You had oxygen coming in many forms into your home, a machine called a...
Oxygen concentrator.
Okay, and you could not be home alone anymore. So dear Sharon, after 34 years working in the hospital, had to come home to provide care. And no wonder, I mean, August 18th, 2012, you were talking to God, and what did you say to him?
Sorry. It was a hot August, rainy, humid day. Probably the worst day of my life. I couldn't breathe. And I was sitting in my chair, and Sharon had gone for groceries. And I just had this conversation with God that I said, if I didn't believe in heaven, if I didn't believe in hell, if I didn't know that Jesus Christ was my Savior, I understand why someone would put a gun in their mouth and pull the trigger. I do not want to live any longer. Just take me home. And I was weeping, and God spoke to me in that instant and said, Wendell, I can do more with what's left of you than you did with the best of you. And I just looked up to the heavens and I threw my arms back. And I said, okay, Lord, this is your deal. You take over. And he spoke to me the second time and said, I'm going to use your life to influence a multitude of people. And here we are.
Now, you didn't suddenly have your lungs open up. In fact, as we're going to find out in the next half, it got worse. Your health went downhill. Did you not doubt what you had heard?
I couldn't.
You stay there, and you stay there. We're going to find out how God came through on his promise. Don't go away.